All right, welcome everyone. Well, look, it's not a Bible study, but these are, I believe, biblical principles that make sense. Let's have a prayer before we get started, shall we? Okay. Dear God in heaven, what a great God you are. We love you. Thank you for inventing people and relationships, and they're complicated. We need your help. So I pray that you bless all the marriages and all of our parenting and all of our different relationships and friendships we have. We invite your supernatural power to help us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Last time in session 1, just a quick recap, we looked at the beginning of John Gottman's work, and you can see his book there, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. I've been over the book a bunch of times now. I bought a physical copy and an audio copy. The physical copy is good to have because it's got like activities that you can do with your spouse. And so also, if you'd like to download an app, what's the name of the app that this guy's got, Jess? Do you remember the name of it? Might be called Love Maps. I think I left my phone somewhere. So anyway, if you Google 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, John Gottman app, there's a game that you can get that's got cards with questions you can ask, and it can be a fun thing to do with your spouse. In sort of by way of review, I want to just ask if anybody can remember what the 4 horsemen were. Do you remember? John Gottman did this big research study where he had 600 couples stay in an apartment in Seattle. They called it the Seattle Love Lab. And these partners were put in the Love Lab over the weekend, and they had video cameras everywhere and suckers on their body to measure their heart rate and all the rest of it. They were watched from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Yes? Contempt. That's exactly right. Well done. You'll get one of these for that. Catch. And so he did this research study over 20 years with a huge team of researchers, and they discovered that there are 4 things that will kill a marriage, and we're going to just do a quick review of that, and 7 things that will make a marriage thrive, and that's what we learned. So the 4 marriage killers from last time, if you put 1, 2, 3, 4, number 3 is contempt. It's the worst thing that you can get. And it's like disgust or disdain. This is where you're name-calling in a relationship and you're putting the other person down. Okay? What were the other 3 of the 4 horsemen? Anybody remember? That would come out in contempt. Yep. So the first one is criticism. Okay, it's like a low level of contempt. So if someone's feeling critical and cranky, remember the critical person's often critical in all of life. And we talked about that they would be driving the car, and critical people, there's only 2 other types of drivers. There's idiots and maniacs. Remember this? So you're stuck behind a driver, look at this idiot, get off the road. And then somebody zooms past, look at that maniac, he's going to be dead. And this is a person who's critical. They can just shooting down everything that they can see all around. They're already cranky about everything. So the critical person, if one spouse is critical, then the other spouse often responds with what? Defensiveness. So that's number 2. So you got this back and forth. Someone's critical. What are you dressed like that for? And then they say, what do you mean what I'm dressed like this for? You said this was a great outfit. And so instead of diffusing it, they're immediately defensive. And then so after defensive comes contempt. And so that's when they say, it started, what are you dressed like that for? You said this was good. What would you be able to remember? You've got no memory whatsoever in that little head of yours. Okay, now you've gotten into contempt. So criticism, defensiveness, and then contempt. And then the person on the receiving end of that hostility is overwhelmed. And so what's the 4th one? Stonewalling. They just shut down. And you can play this in both genders. You can have the woman who's critical, the guy who's defensive, the woman who then ratchets it up with contempt, and then he stonewalls, and she sees he's just not looking anymore. So she's been shooting with a 6-pound cannon, and she thinks that hasn't worked, so she rolls that aside and gets the 10-pound cannon and starts firing even bigger bundies. Or you can flip it. It can be the guy who's shooting these things, and it can work either way. So does anybody remember what the what's the cure for defensiveness? When our spouse is critical, take some responsibility. That's the cure. What's the cure for criticism, or the tool that you use? It's okay to want to correct your spouse or whatever. Yes, that's it. That's that on a graph. So put it into words. Be gentle. Soft startup, gentle startup. This guy's got a photographic memory. Okay, so that's right. So that's your first one. So you've got a problem. Instead of saying, I can't believe you did that, how about saying, honey, starting with a nice word straight off. Honey, I can't believe you did that. Even just that one word can make it more soft. So the more gentle the startup, the more likely that whole conversation is going to be successful. So the third one down, contempt. What's the cure for that? The cure is actually what we're going to look at in this session today. And it's all about building a loving friendship. But if you want to put down something on your paper, you can put nurture, fondness, and admiration. Nurturing fondness and admiration. And then the cure for stonewalling. Stonewalling is when you just block the other person. What's the cure for that? Time out. There's a difference between a timeout and a stonewalling. Stonewalling is I've shut down and we're not engaging anymore. I hope you disappear forever. But a timeout says, this is too much for me. Can we come back to this in half an hour? And the research shows that after half an hour, your blood pressure's gone back down below 100 beats a minute or whatever, and it's like you're a whole new person. All right, that was last time. Now we're going to look at the 7, they're the things to avoid. Now we're going to look at, Gottman calls them the masters. What do the masters do instead of the disasters? And so let's have a look here. Part 1 is build friendships. So you can fill in all of that first section there, and we're going to be talking about this for the first little while. And so the masters are the people who are doing relationships right. And 7. It's on the other side of your page. Yeah. So part 1, you can fill in the word there, friendship. And so we're going to figure out there's 3 different elements to what makes a marriage work. And his research of thousands of hours of watching different people has showed up that at the bottom line, some of the things that make a marriage work are very simple. And they'll make any relationship work, frankly. And the bottom line is friendship. People who stick together over the years and make marriages last are great friends with each other. They're just great friends. And, you got all that wisdom for the price of admission. It was free today, wasn't it? All right, so the 7 principles, we're going to just start with the first 3. And the first one is build your love maps. Any idea what that could be? What is it to build a love map? I don't think you'll guess it. A love map is your knowledge of your spouse. So it's all the information that you know about them. And if you want to have a good, strong friendship, you're going to know lots about your spouse. And often when people start dating, they start building a love map straight away. They ask tons of questions. What do you want to do in life? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Who do you want to be like? Where are you going in life? And we build these love maps. But as time goes by, things change and you need to revisit the love maps and refresh them and build them again. You know, your favorite color used to be blue, but now it's green or whatever. Or you used to want to do this with your life, but it's changed and you want to do that. So how do you build someone's love map? What's the tool that you're going to use in a relationship? Interaction, in particular. Time, yep. Whoops. Catch. You've got to say that again. You've got to investigate. And so how do you investigate? There's one key tool. Ask. You're asking questions and then you listen to the answers. And so this is where the little app is really helpful. It'll give you all these interesting questions that on a date you can ask your spouse. And this is you building a love map. He tells a story of this one couple came to him, and the guy is a surgeon in a hospital, and he's loved by all the staff, but his wife is ready to leave him. And He is so out of touch with his own family. She was longing for time with him. One time it was Christmas. She organised a picnic and took the picnic blanket to the hospital out the front there. They had the picnic. He didn't even come out and join them. And so they were sitting down. He couldn't name the family dog. He didn't know the name of the family dog, and he also couldn't tell you how to get through the house to the back door. This is how much time that he'd spent with his family. Okay? So he had no love map. He had so little knowledge of what was going on in the family. So it blew Gottman's mind. And then this relationship, he started to spend time and ask questions and build a love map. The kind of questions that you could have is, if you've got love maps, this works with your children as well. I want to know, what are the names of my kids' friends at school? If I am involved with my kids, that's something that I might know about them. What are the names of my kids' friends? What are the name of your spouse's friend? If someone asks you the question, does your spouse have a best friend? Who is it? Do you know the answer to that question? Or who would your spouse's 5 or 10 friends be? What does your spouse like to do for fun? What's the dreams of your spouse? What's bothering your spouse in life right now? What's upsetting them in life right now? What are they excited about and looking forward to in life right now? All those questions, if you don't know the answer, that's fine. You've got something that you can ask them, and you can build those love maps. And so that's our first one, building love maps. The second one, we're ready to go on to the second one. So the tool for building love maps would be ask questions. If there was a tool, it would be ask questions. Next one is nurture your fondness and admiration. I've tried to synthesize in my head, where do the other relationships books fit with this book? The 5 love languages and his needs, her needs. I think it fits into this one here, nurtures your fondness and admiration. This one is all about being nice to each other, nurturing your fondness and admiration. And so this is communicating affection and respect. And so this is where you can say thank you to your spouse for little things that they do. Let's say you've got an arrangement with the chores and you do the dishes and it's your job. It's lovely for your spouse to say thank you for doing the dishes, even if it's the agreement that that's what you're going to do. And some couples will say, well, why do I have to say thank you? I do stuff, they do stuff. We just have an agreement. Why bother saying thank you? And then you ask the question, well, do you feel appreciated? No, not really. Would you like to feel appreciated? Yeah, I would. That would be nice. Well, that's why you say thank you. You say thank you to each other because it's nice. And so your spouse is going to do nice things for you, and they are very insignificant little things. And when you are grateful for that and you affirm one another and the effort that they're putting in, it makes a big difference. And so when we're first dating someone, we're all about that. Oh, you're so wonderful. Oh, thank you for doing this. And when you're trying to build a friendship, you naturally will be quite affirming of the other person. But you live in the same house with someone for a while and you can forget about it. And so what can also happen is you might, if there hasn't been a lot of this going on, you might already have a low love tank to start with, and you kind of ticked off with that person. You don't feel like doing these nice things for them or saying nice things. But that's where you need to, a couple who are both on a low love tank will need to kickstart, and it's like they're borrowing from someone else's bank or borrowing from the future, and they're going to say, I'm going to be nice to you even though I'm not feeling it. Okay? And so you do it for a while even though you're not feeling it, and then they're doing nice things for you even though they're not feeling it, and then the feelings come after a while. There's fuel back in the tank, and then the feelings start to come, and it becomes easier to affirm and be kind to the other person. So if you wanted to put down a note for this one, you can just put saying thank you for the little things, nurturing your fondness and admiration. And this is where I think you can do nice little things for one another. I remember having an eye into another couple's relationship in a personal way. And it was when Jessica and I were earthquaked out of our house in New Zealand, and some friends from church said, you can stay with us. We pulled in, we just piled our car with a few things, and our kids drove up the highway. There was chocolate block. There was no power water, and our house had been flapping around like this, and it was like crooked and leaning like this. So we thought, we're not staying there tonight. And so we drove up the highway, and off the road at Belfast was a couple that we knew from church, and we said, let's pull in and see how they're doing. And they said, come on in. They said, you can stay here for as long as you need. So we moved in there with them, and we watched their family interact with each other. It was interesting. I was amazed because I remember they had this routine at night. They'd put their dressing gowns on, and then they would do nice things for each other that they could have done for themselves. Can I get you a drink, honey? I'd think, just get your own drink, or they can get their own drink. But they would do these nice things for each other, little gestures that I thought, like, boy, that's kind. Like, can I put a pillow under your feet and things like this? What? It was foreign to me. I just thought, look at them. They could put a pillow under their own. They could put a pillow under their own feet. And I thought, but it's nice. That would be lovely. That seems lovely. These two people have decided that they're going to be super nice to each other. That's what this fondness and admiration stuff is. You're deciding, we could just do enough just to get by, but couples that last the difference, they've decided to be super nice to each other. And say that again? Yeah, they were working. It was amazing. And so, yeah. And so you can think about the love languages. You've got gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and you can do all these things and fill their tank. Okay, and so if you combine that with the first one, where you know a lot about them, then you're doing a lot of these caring, loving things for them. Now, the third one is bids for attention. This is the example he gives. In the Seattle Love Lab, one of them will be looking out the window and they'll see on the harbour a boat going by. And they'll go, the other one's reading the newspaper. The person at the window says, that's a nice boat. And the other one's reading the paper. Now, that's what they call a bid for attention. And so at this point, a couple of different things could happen. One option is the person ignores it and does nothing. They ignore the bid for attention. They just keep reading. And that's unhealthy in the relationship. Another option is the person can fold the top of their paper down and go, and have a look. That's responding to a bid for attention. And it makes a world of difference, it turns out. These tiny little things make a world of difference. And another thing that they could do is, on some couples, they'd put the paper right down, walk over by the window and go, wow, that is a beautiful boat. And then they might say, you know what, have you ever thought, let's just sell everything and buy a boat like that and let's just take off. And that's what they would call an extreme response to a bid for attention. Yeah, you've thought of that. So we make all these little bids for attention all the time. Now, what happens when nobody responds to the bid for attention? How do you feel? Rejected? Yep. There we go. Catch. Yeah. What did you say? You feel like dad? That's what happens to dads. Yes. Yes. That's it. So, are you likely to keep doing bids for attention? No. You've made a little bid for attention, and you're probably not really going to try. And they could make a big fuss about it. And I said, what a beautiful boat that is out the window. And then the moment's already been sort of wrecked. And they said that they just noticed people's physical body language after a bid for attention had been rejected. They would be down somewhat, hunch over, or maybe they'll do some face-saving thing like pat the cat or distract themselves in some other way, but they didn't feel great being ignored. And so these tiny little things turns out they make a huge difference. Someone's looking at their, or perhaps it was just a thought. Yeah, I'll give you lots of chocolate for that. So these little bids for attention, someone's scrolling through the thing on their phone and they laugh out loud at a joke that they just read. Ha ha ha. It's nice when the spouse says, "What's that?" And then they go, "Look at this," and then you say, ha ha ha. Those little moments together build a friendship. And so we need to make, what happens is, if a couple is building their love maps, asking, they know what matters to their spouse, they know all about them, and they're filling their love tank, doing these kind things, they're responding to bids for attention, all that adds up to best friends. That's what best friends are. You're really nice to each other. You're best friends. And the research turns out that best friendship state has a few super duper benefits. One of them is section 2, which is dealing with conflict. You can fill in that in a second, but part 2 is dealing with conflict. People who are doing really well in this top department, when conflict happens, it happens a completely different way because of what's happened in the friendship department. The other thing that goes really great, so it turns out, is passion and sex and romance. Who would have thought? Part 3, it isn't actually. It doesn't even get a part. How terrible is that? But it's what we've all been waiting for. But I didn't even put it on the jolly map. What sort of workshop is this? So, wouldn't you know it, the relationships that have the best friendships end up being the ones with the best passion and the best romance and the best sex. And Gottman gives an example for that. He says, love this song. Take your time. I'm just glad that it's you, not me. All right. So he gives this example. Gottman said he wrote a book called 1001 Romantic Ideas or something like that. And he said an idea number 27 is there's one's written for men and one's written for women. And so one of his men's ideas was this: buy her a gold necklace with a locket on it with your picture inside. And that this is a romantic gesture. And so here's his evidence that these having this good friendship is a make or break thing that will help romance, sex, and passion. He said, imagine a couple where the guy hasn't asked his wife how she's going and what's happening in her life for 17 years. The love maps have got a lot of blanks. He hardly knows what's going on in her life. Then finally, they go out for dinner, and they're at dinner, and she starts sharing a story, and he says to her, "What kind of a stupid story is that? Why would you share that story?" And he's not being gentle with her. He's not showing any fondness or admiration. And then she's been given up on bids for attention because he never responds and wouldn't have a clue when she's trying to get his attention. So she's completely given up on that. So then she gets out of the blue this necklace with a locket, and she opens up, and there's a picture of that guy inside. Is she going to feel romantic feelings at that moment? She'll probably, Gottman says, she'll probably chuck it on the driveway and run over it with the car a few times. However, if a guy had been, interested in his wife, and he knows everything that's going on, he knows he's there with the ups and downs of life, and he knows all the details, and he's a kind, good listener, and they've been filling each other's love tank, and every time that she finds something funny on Facebook, he's always interested to have a look, and all the bids for attention get responded. Then when she gets a necklace with a picture of him inside, she thinks, "I'm in love with this guy. What a beautiful gift that you've given me." And so the same act that's supposed to be romantic, if you're doing it and you've already oiled the engine with all this friendship stuff, well then romance just takes off. You don't need much because all the root system's already there and the flower blossoms, as it were. And so this is why this friendship thing is so important, and it brings that passion and romance back into an intimacy and your sex life. All right, let's go into part 2 then, dealing with conflict. And so you can fill in the 3 things here, dealing with conflict. So also, similarly, if you've got the friendship down right, conflict is going to be a lot more easy on your relationship. And he talks about 3 different situations within conflict that I'm going to share with you today: overcoming gridlock, solving your solvable problems, and letting your partner influence you. So he points out that in a marriage, their research showed that 69% of conflicts in a marriage are never solved. You come back 4 years later, they're still arguing about all the same stuff. Most stuff, you don't resolve it. And so the issue is, and he calls that gridlock, and his symbol of it is 2 fists banging into each other like this. Gridlock is like traffic in all banked up on the highway, 3 lanes, you just can't get anywhere. And so, when in a disaster relationship, every time you bring up this topic, they go straight to the 4 horsemen: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, stonewalling. Replay the whole thing for the 500th time. Boom. We're just straight into those patterns. And so he talks about techniques for overcoming gridlock. And so the first thing that you should do for overcoming gridlock is go back to the friendship department and keep working on that, because that's gonna oil the whole machine and make it work a whole lot better when you're dealing with perpetual problems. In a minute, we're going to talk about the solvable problems, the other 31%. But when you're dealing with perpetual problems, like any problem, it helps when you've got all that loving friendship to back each other up. So what's an example of a perpetual problem? A perpetual problem might be something like, he is an extrovert and wants to have a lot of social life, and she's an introvert and gets exhausted by spending time with a lot of people. That's probably just always going to be like that. He is a Christian and wants to bring up the kids to follow Jesus. She's not and she's an atheist. That could change, but more than likely that's going to be a perpetual problem. And so these are some ongoing things. Solvable problems, it's his job to take out the garbage, but he often forgets. We can solve that problem. Put a sign up on the fridge and say, remember to take out the garbage. That's a solvable problem. And so how do you handle these situations where you've got gridlock? Gottman suggests that inside of each need, which is creating a gridlock situation, is a deeper dream. And he said that when you're so tense and fighting all the time, and you're going through the 4 horsemen when it comes to gridlock, you'll never be able to get to the deeper issue. And so he said, but if you've got all the oil in the machine of a loving friendship, then what can happen is you can open up those fists and say, on the outside I've been asking for this, but what it means to me on a deeper level is this. I've always dreamt that we would do this. Or this person can open up their fist and they can say, I've always been longing for this need to be met in my life. And there's a deeper thing there that never gets discussed while you're in the conflict mode of the 4 horsemen. And so by having the close friendship, you can have a trust environment where you can open up and say, when I'm not getting my need met with that, this is what the deeper longing for my life is that matters to me so much. And by addressing what that need is, the other person doesn't necessarily need to fully be on board with it, but they can provide love and support around that. And so they may never share that exactly, but in a loving relationship, when that person's shared what the deeper longings of their soul is, the other person can respect and support that and help them to try and meet that goal in their life. And even if it's not something that would have come naturally to them. And so you'll be able to overcome grid life and work out compromises and ways of supporting each other when you've got that safety of a loving friendship going. So what you want to move from is, instead of being in gridlock, move from no compromise attitude into a dialogue. It was interesting that he spoke a little bit about, Gottman speaks a little bit about research that they did on violent couples. And in a violent couple, the guy would never compromise. And we're going to jump down now to accepting influence from one another. It's the third one. Let your partner influence you. And this is to do with particularly guys accepting influence from the woman. Now, it can go both ways, but typically women are much more willing to compromise and accept influence from their husband. But most often, guys are being staunch and don't want to be influenced by their woman, and they won't look for compromise as an option. And the research showed that in these violent couples, the men would never accept any influence from the woman, and they would take that as that woman trying to control them, and they were very cranky about it, and they would never give them an inch. And that was a quality that was shown in that kind of dysfunctional relationship. So I don't know when he did his research study, like the bit about violence. I think that you're right, and he did address that. Like is the phrase emancipation of women, like equal rights, women's rights, all this kind of stuff. And he said that the climate has changed, and he said that it's now is a better time. Like women are used to being respected in every other area of life now, but will they be respected in their marriage and in their personal relationship? And so he did reflect on those dynamics. Yeah, but I do think the trend have changed. Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's worthy of some dark chocolate. Just give it to someone else. It's fun to throw things around occasionally. Okay. So the idea of accepting influence from one another is, the tool there is just simply moving towards compromise. And so, and also the other tool there is calming down. So when you're in a fight, it's that one where you're giving yourselves a time out. He said they actually did a trick on people in the Love Lab. He said they measured people's heart rates because they had these suckers on them, and they noticed their heart rates would get up over 100 beats per minute when they were having a Barney. And then they did an experiment, and they said they'd go into the couple who are at it hammer and tongs, and they'd say, "Oh, sorry to interrupt, we've got a problem with the video machine and our recording equipment. Can you guys just pause right there for a second, and we're just going to fix things, so just hold that thought." They gave them a magazine each, and then they went out of the room, and there's nothing wrong with the cameras at all, and they just were watching their heart rate, and when their heart rate got down below 100 beats per minute, then they would come back in and say, "Oh, it's all fixed, you can start again." And he said it was like it was a completely different couple. Isn't that amazing? And so here's the thing, it's a flight or fight response. And when we're triggered like that, apparently all these things go out of whack in your body. Adrenaline pumps through your system, your arteries restrict, and your blood pressure goes up, and your kidneys start producing stuff that makes your blood pressure go up more. And apparently your amygdala is this part of your brain which deals with emotions. It's faster than your conscious part of your brain, which deals with logic. And so your spouse will say something that pushes your buttons, and before you realize you've already resolved that, you're angry already because you remember the last time you went here and it was so distressing. And so all this can happen in an instant. You get wound up, and your brain can't think creatively at that time. And when you're trying to come up with compromises and things like that, you need that creativity. And so all in this highly emotional state, you can't get anywhere. Now, this is good information to know for any relationship, isn't it? And so if someone's blowing their stack, it's not the time to try and reason with them. They can't reason in that state. You need to just give them time to calm down and come back to it. And so calming down turns out to be a great tool that you're able to use. All right. Going back to more information on solving your solvable problems. The masters here use gentleness. We talked about gentleness before. They were presenting their issues in a very gentle way. And so he gives this example about him and his wife, and he said to his wife, "Julie, you're so emotionally unavailable to me. What is wrong with you?" Okay, that was how he pitched his need for closer friendship to her. And he said, surprise, surprise, she didn't want to talk to me when I talked to her like that. And he said, but then he watched his own research and saw how the masters did it, and so he tried a completely different tack. And so he tried a gentle approach, and he said, I've been getting the feeling of being really lonely. I miss you, and I need more of you in my day. And he said, and I noticed they also express appreciation, and so he threw some of that in. He said, a few weeks ago, when we cuddled on the couch, that was so nice. How could we do that again? And so he's actually affirming her in that moment, and she says to him, well, how about we just do that now? And so rather than criticizing her, what is wrong with you, he flattered her, told her how much he needed her, respected her, admired her, and how important she was to him. This sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it, when you say it out loud? But for me, for whatever reason, it's helpful to have an example and think it through. So a gentle, softened startup seems to work wonders. And people are willing to accept that guidance. He gave coming back to the importance of having the first three things, the friendship, how it impacts on conflict in a better way. He said, if you've got somebody who's been doing all the first three things really well, building love maps, nurturing fondness and admiration, responding to bids for attention, their love bank or their love tank is full, right? And so he said, imagine a couple comes down the stairs in the morning, and the wife says to the husband, who's already in the kitchen, she says, in a nice enough way, she says, honey, you're not supposed to use the microwave with no food in it. And he says, and he just blows his stack and he says, what are you telling me how to run the microwave for, as if I don't know what I'm doing? And then he will lay into her and give her a piece of his mind. What's happened is his love bank is low, and he's got a chip on his shoulder because of that. And so he's like a bomb waiting to go off already because his tank's low and he's got a chip on his shoulder. And so he's walking around looking for something to bite off as soon as it shows itself. Now, if you've got a couple where the person's love tank is full, she comes down and she could say, in a really rude way, are you an idiot or what? There's no food in the microwave. You're going to blow the house up if you keep doing stuff like that. He could just look at her and go, and if his tank's full, he'll say, oh, my mistake. And he'll think in his head, well, she's upset about something today. And he'll think, I'll have to figure out what's stressing her out. Yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn.
Yes, I'll give you another one for trying to learn. There we go. They make a huge difference. And the facts are, and we've got, when it comes to certain elements, us Aussies are on the back foot, and other elements we're on the front foot, because we're more genuine and down to earth, and we're often more real and genuine. That's a helpful thing in a relationship. But like you said, and you don't need to tell a lie, but it's how you tell the truth. It's in the delivery. It's all in the delivery. Are you going to do it gently, or are you going to do it harshly? And so us Aussies, we struggle to say those nice words, but it turns out that it makes a big difference. Okay, so you can hear in that example, she can come down, So what's this? So it's good to have that wisdom. So what's the potential solution for that scenario? Quit your job. Very good. It's a good question, though. Has anybody else got a solution? Yeah. Take a break before. And that I've heard that suggested before. Sit in the car for 20 minutes or whatever. And timing's everything. So that's learning your patterns about yourself. And say that again. Articulating where you're at. And drugs, yes, you can have one for that.
No, I actually mean that sort of seriously. But, if you're hungry,
Yes.
at the end of the day,
Yes.
I'm grumpy.
That's right.
So you've got to make sure you've got good healthy food, and it's not
You're hungry, that's right.
this food that's going to make me
Better. Yes. So so some of that stuff's very practical. Like in our household in the morning, if the kids haven't had their first bite of cereal is a big deal. If you can get them to have that first bite, everything's going to be okay. Until that's happened, like this morning, like wild tears and crying for no real reason other than zero blood sugar. And so, yeah. Well, yeah. My response to that is, this is just research from after analysing 600 couples of those whose marriages lasted. Well, he started in the 80s, for what it's worth. Yeah, so it's in the last 40 years. And so, so these are the couples whose marriages lasted. And I guess we are alive now, and we're not alive from then. And who knows what the research would have shown then. But you did pick up on something inadvertently, or which is our part 3. So we'll jump to that right now. So part 3 is creating shared meaning. Creating shared meaning, and the subheading's the same as that. The point. Point number 7 is relationships that last create shared meaning together. So this is having your own. He makes a point. He says a marriage is more than just parenting, dividing up chores, and having sex. Marriage is more than that. A marriage that lasts has got a spiritual element to it. And he's a Jewish guy, but he uses that term, and he says you've got to have these visions that you're working towards, a project that you're working on together that you share. And so that project, he said, you could be building a houseboat. That could be your big dream. And you're both invested in it, and you're both working on it together. I guess parents would share that same dream often for their children, but not necessarily. But that's an opportunity there. But then one day the children are going to be up and gone, and so what's the new dream and vision going to be that you're sharing together? For Christians, many of it would be a ministry that we share together. But it could be anything. But if you want to have this well-rounded relationship that lasts, having shared meaning together. And he talks about the value of forming family traditions. So he says, every Easter, if you always go and have a special meal at someone with the relatives or whatever, and it's never missed, that's a special thing. Or at Seventh-day Adventists, on a Friday night, we have the best meal of the week with opening the Sabbath together. And these sort of traditions build a depth into the relationship. And so, comment. Yes. So having that, tackling those challenges in life as a team, I think is a great point. And so creating shared meaning is his final and 7th sort of concept. And so what are you working on together with your spouse that you're excited about? What shared vision or projects do you have? And what family traditions and creating your own special little mini family culture have you developed? And that would include your kids potentially, but especially just the two of you. Do you have rituals that you engage in? Praying with each other before you go to bed, a kiss before you leave at the beginning of the day before you go out the door, special little things like that, date night on Thursday night or whatever, and you're doing special things, or every one night a week we go out for dinner or something like that. These things will add that extra strength to the relationship. All right, that's it, whether you're happy or not.
Whether you're happy or not. Rooms or whatever,
Yes.
the others down
Yeah.
or whatever. But the whole idea of this is for both to have a little bit of fun.
You can be actually happily married for life, not just...
And enjoying it.
Yes, that's it.
And I think that is worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think that even in the midst of things, you can learn to be nice to each other and be gracious and kind. And the statistic of 5 positives for 1 negative. And he said, but in the Love Lab, we noticed the ratio is different. When the couple's just hanging out with really nothing to do for the whole weekend, it needed to be 20 positives for 1 negative. That's interesting, isn't it? So what the overall theme is, though, we need to be being super nice to each other all the time to be able to handle. We're going to have to spend our niceness for negative moments where we're going to have to talk about issues and problems. And so we need to be investing continuously in each other. Yeah, 6 months. And stay in touch so the relationship's not just off for 6 months. And so it's a matter of looking at these basic needs, and I would say looking at the 5 love languages or the his needs, her needs list as well, and saying, how can we do this despite the terrible challenges that we're facing? Like I'm bracing myself for impact. Jess is pregnant come November. I just know 6 months, don't really have a wife. Like it's I've just got work, and so but there are things that we can do even in the midst of the mayhem to put a bit of sweetness in life. Yep. The research shows that this is how things work, and so you can take it or leave it, but it's just what's been observed, for better or worse. Yeah, and maybe we are a bit soft compared to what we used to be. However, I think the Bible says God is love. And so I think it was always a good idea to be nice to each other. Yeah. So anyway, that's the whole presentation. Thanks, everybody. I want to pray for you before we finish. Let's have a prayer to finish up. Dear God in heaven, these principles work not only for marriages, but for relationships with our own kids and work relationships as well in many regards, and friendships. And I just pray, Lord God, that you would bless marriages, bless parenting, bless friendships right here in this church, Lord, and for the people in this room. We ask in Jesus' name that you would give us energy and strength to fill up our love tanks, Lord, so that we can be good to one another. And I pray that you'd give us wisdom and insight for tackling some of our gridlock problems in our relationships, that we don't go down the path of the 4 horsemen, having a go at each other and getting defensive, but instead that we'd have gentle start-up, and that we'd be able to communicate in a productive way to converse rather than conflict. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.